Lady Luck has smiled on the White Sox. The ping pong balls went their way. This is a huge, huge day for the franchise. Let's discuss.
You are Locked On White Sox, your daily Chicago White Sox podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, I'm Todd Welter. Welcome to Locked On White Sox, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network. I'm a lifelong Sox fan and been podcasting here for over a year and a half and covering the team well before then. And also I've covered Major League Baseball for outlets such as the Associated Press. Something finally went the White Sox way. And let's discuss how winning the #1 overall pick can re-energize this franchise. And I do also want to get your reaction, but this is massive, people. The White Sox have a chance to draft a generational talent. And I'm going to go out and say a generational talent. I'll probably butcher his name, but I just, Connor McKnight pronounced it for me once. Roch Cholowsky from UCLA. This is big. And think about this. Things like this have never happened to the White Sox. I mean, think about last decade's rebuild and all the tanking. And you never got close, never, to the #1 overall pick. And especially when, as I talked about on today's earlier episode, a 65 grade player is right there at the top of the board. And the White Sox have a chance to grab him. And the biggest thing, the most massive thing, though, is the bonus pool money. And GM Chris Getz was on the MLB network lottery coverage afterwards, and that's what he said. It is, you get this massive amount of money now to work with. But I do think when it comes to and I've always believed this, when it comes to at least your top 3 picks, money should be no option. In fact, with your top 150 picks, I've always believed there's probably 150, when you look at all the baseball players out there, and there's still a lot of baseball players out there in America, when you look at amateur, and you look at all the states, there's probably a good amount of 150 players every draft that have a shot to get to the big leagues at some point. So, you got to make sure that you spend on those guys then. Money should be no object when it comes to 1 through 5. But I get that maybe, kind of what happened in this year's draft, where on day 2, or was it day? Yeah, on day 2, that high school shortstop prep guy all of a sudden said, yeah, I'll sign. So, granted it would be way over slot, but that was still like a potential first round pick had he gone to college that you could have gotten, obviously, and stolen a pick. So I get the whole steal a pick. So that's the thing. You've got so much flexibility in this. And it's just shocking. And none of that, think about this. All this losing that we've endured, all this losing that you and I have endured together, have gone through, has finally paid off. Because I do remember doing plenty of shows during the 2024 season about how what made that record amount of losing so awful and so painful was that the White Sox did not have a silver lining of potentially getting the #1 overall pick. But in the grand scheme of things, in the big picture, these 3 straight 100-loss seasons that we've endured, finally there's a silver lining. Now, does the first round pick, does the #1 overall pick mean you're going to get a surefire Hall of Famer? No, there's only 4 #1 overall picks. But when you see what some of these guys at the top of the draft can do, especially Rock, you got to at least like your chances. And, they're talking about, Troy Tulowitzki had a fine career. So that's kind of what he's being compared to. So even if you get, a guy like Tulo, that would be amazing. But at the very least, you want to hope for, better, for even bigger and better. And that can give you that opportunity. And what's even nice is, again, you're picking #1 overall in the first round, and then you're picking second in every round after. So that's an opportunity to add more pieces to this team because, like, I'm going to be talking with Beefloaf from the 108 for tomorrow's show, but I was getting ready for, like, what does the opening day lineup look like? And take a look at this. Like, this is what the opening day lineup, I think, could potentially. I still think they need to add a starter, 2 relievers, but, and then when it comes to the core status. But when you look at it, these are some fine players, actually. The talent floor, I think, has been risen. And if you do get some improvement internally, you probably should increase your win total. But if you can get an actual impact player like Roch Cholowsky again, or Cholowsky, I know I'm butchering his name, I'm sorry. But if you can get a guy like him, this would be absolutely transcendent. This is what the type of draft that can help you turn things around and quickly, because especially if you go with Rock, he might not need that much time in the minors. Or again, let's say they do get a little crazy. And I know it'd be disappointing to everybody, but let's say they go with Justin LeBron because out of Alabama, because he'll sign for a little bit less. And then you can use, again, more of that bonus pool money to get a high impact, another high ceiling player in the second round, because they'll be there. Let's say they do that. And even in the third round, because they'll be there, because you can still get those guys, in the top 150, I think, or more so in the top 100. Then, when you get to the fourth and fifth round, you're still looking at probably some, at least guys that can be solid everyday players, like Sam Altanachi, for example. But when you look at, let's say they go with Justin LeBron, he still might not need a whole bunch of time in the minors. And I know I'm going to be kind of super scouty, like, because I've watched a little bit. I've not watched Rock at all. I never got the time. It never occurred to me like, hey, UCLA is back in the Big Ten. You always forget about that. So that you can watch them on the Big Ten Network. And that's what I suggest to everybody. Watch on the Big Ten Network. Connor McKnight of CHSN is probably going to do the play-by-play. I got to get him on the show, too, to discuss them. But I did watch a little bit of SEC baseball because I got the ESPN Plus subscription. And the only time I could catch Alabama, though, was in the SEC championship game. I liked what I saw LeBron out of a couple of at-bats, but I could see also why, again, how scouting used to have, such errors. Because, like, I watched him, I'm like, well, he had a couple walks, and he's got a good build, but I never really watched him do anything impactful. But still, you look at the production, he can be very impactful. This is just the draft where, yes, you want to be at the top, have the pick of the litter, but I do hope it's going to be Rock. Now, I do want to get to your reactions, and we're going to get to that after the break. NFL Sundays move fast, one big play, and suddenly everything feels different. That's what makes live betting with FanDuel so exciting. You're not just watching the game, you're reacting to it in real time. With FanDuel, you can place bets as the action unfolds. Every drive, every momentum swing, every highlight moment. Live betting is best when the game starts to shift. A receiver gets hot, a defense tightens up, or the momentum flips after a turnover. And I recommend playing the same game parlays or the player props. It gives you the chance at a bigger payout. For example, think Chicago can win the next 4 games and finish with over 12 wins? Well, the Monsters of the Midway, finishing with 12 plus victories, is at plus 200 the last time I checked. So there's a chance to double your money there if it does happen. Think Chicago can still win the NFC North? Well, that's at plus 270 the last time I checked, so a chance to almost triple your cash. And if you really want to dream big and think Chicago can get to the Super Bowl, they're at plus 1,400 to win the NFC Championship game. You could throw $10 on that, and if it does happen, you could potentially pocket $140. So if you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com and place your NFL live bets all season long. FanDuel, the game moves fast, so can you. The World Cup is coming back to North America for the first time since 1994. And with 48 teams for the first time ever, it's going to be massive. But let's be honest, getting tickets is usually the hardest part. That's why the Game Time app is clutch, finally giving fans a real advantage when it comes to snagging seats. With Game Time, you can track price drops in real time, get alerts when great seats open, and buy tickets the moment they hit the app. It puts the power back in your hands and makes going to the World Cup realistic instead of impossible. And I've used Game Time for things like getting 10 tickets to a Milwaukee NBA game. I got great seats, my entire party was able to sit together with a great view of the game. Pick a game, tap a section, and have your tickets locked in within minutes. No confusion, no hunting for fine print. Prices include fees up front, which I love. No last-second surprises at checkout. Take the guesswork out of buying World Cup tickets and every match, concert, or event with Game Time. Download the Game Time app. Create an account and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, download the app, make an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Game Time. Welcome back to Locked On White Sox. I'm your host, Todd Welter. Shout out to all the everydayers. I appreciate your loyalty. Make sure to hit the like button on this episode. Subscribe to the YouTube channel at Locked On White Sox. Make sure to subscribe to wherever you get your audio version of the show, as we're on places such as Apple or Spotify. Also, then make sure to leave a 5-star review. Either way, get your 30-minute fix of Chicago White Sox baseball venting with me and maybe some hope. Obviously, today is a hopeful day. Also, make sure to check out my written content at SouthsideSox.com and on tapsportsnet.com. So I want to get to your comments. I know I put in some of you there. So again, Howard, just popping the champagne, man. Totally agree with you on this. This is a day to actually be exciting because, yes, while we had to endure a ton of losing, it's the draft to actually have the number one overall pick because, you know, nobody's guaranteed to obviously be something in the majors because, again, how long it takes to develop. It's one of the hardest games to play. But Roch has got a chance to be a stud. He is the stud of studs. Eric saying, what a day. And he can't believe it. And I can't either. Because how many times have we talked about, like, the White Sox never win a free agent sweepstakes, really? I mean, the last time I think the White Sox ever did something surprising for agency was like when they signed Albert Bell. Maybe Adam Dunn, and then that turned out to be just an absolute, disaster. But these things, don't typically happen to the White Sox. And then we got Randy saying we've got the number one overall pick, and what a great day for the South Side. Eric comes back and says we have a great future. John saying Rock Lobster. Now, Rock Lobster. Getting back to Eric, he says he's still in shock. Christian, this is a make or break draft for Getz. Got to take everybody into consideration. And I agree with that. They really should, though, do their due diligence. I mean, I think because, again, it's, and I can already see, first of all, some things that could be coming down the pike and some potential disappointment that shouldn't be there. Number one, look at what the Nationals did with Eli Willits. There wasn't a true consensus number one pick in the 2025 draft, but there was a couple of 60 grade players, and those guys, if you don't have a 65 grade, the very, very rare 70 grade that gets there, then you got to choose among, these 60 grade guys. And what the Nationals did is they went with Eli Willits, underslotted him, and then they used some more of that extra bonus pool money that you get to get some other high impact players with potential in the second or third round because they're still there. Because none of that, some guys with first round talent may fall for whatever reason, because everybody's draft board is going to be different. Every scout's going to have a different perspective. And also, again, every team might attack the draft differently. Some teams, again, are going to use cost as their motivating factor. Some teams are going to go with the best player available, regardless of position. And also, if you're saying, well, why are they picking a shortstop? Well, after they picked Billy Carlson, you got Colson Montgomery, and even the failed 2023 draft that's probably going to happen, and Jacob Gonzalez. You could never go wrong taking shortstops. You should always be the process should be draft up the middle. Catcher, pitcher, shortstop, maybe sometimes second, just because, again, you can move them to third of the outfield, and center field because of the positional versatility, the athleticism, and usually in college, and high school, that's where the best players are usually. You could make an exception for a third baseman who rakes or a right fielder who rakes. Never draft a first baseman unless they have, genetic, some sort of genetic freakage, like Frank Thomas or Prince Fielder, not Andrew Vaughn. And again, I'm not going to pile on Andrew Vaughn. That was a different draft too, but you could see, again, looking what happened with all that tanking. They never got the number one overall pick. They never even got the number two. And then they got stuck into that, no man's land where it's like, you can go with this guy, He's got this, and this. Maybe he's got a high floor, but doesn't have a high ceiling. This is a guy, they have a chance to get a guy that not only has a high floor, but an tremendous ceiling. But they should, take into consideration everybody when it comes to that. Why is Roch the best? Scouts are raving about him. They are saying that he is the best prospect to come along at shortstop since like Troy Tulowitzki. He's got, 60 grade on everything but run, which is a 45 grade, had tremendous production at UCLA, great athleticism, can hit for power, can hit for average. And they say he got great fielding. He's got a great arm. And again, he's got the production where maybe you could drop him in and he's ready to go. And I talked to Connor McKnight down at the White Sox podcast row, and he was saying, this guy is a stud. And Connor got to call a bunch of UCLA games for the Big Ten Network. He has seen him. The scouts are drooling over this guy. And that's why it is such a huge momentum shift for this rebuild to potentially get a guy like Roch. But that doesn't mean, again, there's a couple of other guys in Emerson, a couple of prep shortstops that they could get. Although, again, if you've got Billy Carlson, I don't think you would go prep at the top. I don't think if you've got Carlson, a little bit of time, you should probably go college. So you're probably looking at, this is just my thinking, it should come down to, do you want the shortstop out of UCLA or the shortstop out of Alabama? And again, things can change too. I mean, Justin LeBron could have a monster season at Alabama and Roch could regress. I hope it doesn't. But, like at this point last year, Chase Laviolette was one of the top prospects in the draft. And he had a terrible season at Texas A&M. So I do think you just got to do your due diligence now. You really got to hope that the scouting have been looking at these guys on the showcase. They got a very good idea of who they are, and then you're just doing your due diligence. Let's see, what else? This comment, he isn't being compared to Tulo because of the Polish last name. No, I don't think so. But if you go on MLB Pipeline, Troy Tulowitzki is the name on the scouting report. Inez, there is no decision. Just draft Roch. And Inez, I'm not calling you out here, man. I knew where you're coming from. You're so excited that you just are typing so fast. You didn't need to clarify. I knew where you're at, man. And trust me, like, if I had to go just on the grades and just from what I'm reading, yeah, I would go with Roch. But we got to, let's let this play out. That's all I'm saying. Do your due diligence. Don't get, on this. But this is definitely the draft to have won the number one overall pick. And it happened to the White Sox. Now, obviously, they got to get the pick right. They got to get the rest of the picks right, too. I mean, they've got to be doing everything humanly possible, but you've got to like where this is going for 2028. And then, as Aiden says, infield could be dominant once Jay Ishbia takes over. I mean, think about this. You could have all these young talent emerging by the time this potential rich hobbyist owner takes over the team. I mean, it's a day where you can actually have some hope. It's a day that, I got my Harold Baines jersey on. Harold Baines delivered for us, folks, because he was the guy that was the White Sox representative. He was the good luck charm. So thank you, Harold. And he was also the last time the White Sox had the number one overall pick. It's been that long. And you know that there's been a lot of losing without the payoff of getting your pick of the litter. And there is a stud of studs at the top of the draft. Well, that wraps up this special live edition of Locked On White Sox. I'll be back tomorrow with B-Flow of FromThe108.com to discuss how the White Sox can fill out the rest of their roster. Make sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel at Locked On White Sox. And if you can't catch the show on YouTube, make sure to follow or subscribe and wherever you get your audio podcasts so you get all the latest episodes. We're on platforms such as Apple or Spotify. You can follow the show on X, formerly Twitter, at Locked On Sox or at Todd J. Dub. Also follow the show on TikTok at Locked On Sox. You can also email me your questions and comments to lockedonwhitesox@gmail.com. And have a great day. I will talk to you tomorrow.
Did
And
Locked On
also,
White Sox make your Spotify Wrapped?
prove it on social media to secure a free month of our brand new Everydayer Club. Just tag our National Locked On Podcast Network account on any social platform, and we'll drop you a code. Be one of the first to join the Everydayer Club to get your favorite show ad-free and exclusive access to the members-only Discord channel. For those of you on video, we send you to the first ever 24/7 National Locked On Podcast Network YouTube channel. On audio, make sure you make your second listen Locked On MLB.